Telemon Heavy Dreadnought. None of us could believe our eyes, our ears, even our noses, for the very airs of holy terror had been befouled. It happened so fast. We stood chanting and praying, extolling the God Emperor. The throng of people headed toward one of his holy chapels. We were packed in so tight, if one passed out from the crush, they would never topple over. A million tributary thoroughfares fed into this main causeway, and it never ended. Pushed together, we could barely shuffle forward, could barely breathe as it was. Thus, when it began, we could not escape. The sky went red, and rain began. But it was not water. It was thick, viscous, and smelt of iron. It was blood. And now, a brief word from the sponsors of this video. Needs must, eh? 1 minute 26 seconds, let's do this. Welcome to Hero Wars. This has been doing the rounds, but is a great RPG with a wealth of opportunity. A game with enough choice that anyone can find their perfect avatar, and a graphic style that is intensely endearing. Look, Jabba, an awesome tank with armor to spare. Now Celeste is the real prize. She's a mixed character, able to DPS dark form and heal with light form, and her outfit is racy to say the least. A game you can pick up and play on the go, easy to start and entertaining to master as you form your team. Mojo is my man, but Star, Martha and Cleaver all make up the ensemble. A unique world with over 6 modes and over 100 million players, all doing missions from Arena, Airship, Outland, Tower and the Grand Arena modes. With a thriving community of over 4 million adherents, there is no end to the advice you can gain. So you can solo it or organize parties of friends to go trawling. And if you start today, you will get a super chest with 5 heroes, 1 a surprise, and 600 emeralds and 300,000 gold. Scan the QR code or download the game from the links in the description and begin your hero's journey. With 50 heroes and 130 missions, it's an enthralling pastime. So join the ball and support the channel by hitting the links today. Hero Wars. See you in the action.
Choose your side. Play Hero Wars.
Thank you for your patience. Now, back to the story. On Holy Terror itself, the seat of the Emperor, it rained blood. And then we saw things in the sky, darting down and scooping up pilgrims as they turned back into the airs. But these hellish screaming things, twisted huge birds seemingly made out of metal, they would simply drop people they had collected. And I watched as they dropped down amongst us, a horror for those beneath, as they could not escape, even as the dropped person increased in size as they plummeted down. Those beneath could not get away due to the crush. When they hit, they and anyone beneath them was turned into a red paste, their lifeblood spurting into the air and creating a mist, so many were dying. Then the things could be seen coming into the main causeway, on the ground. They had hacked and butchered their way to this point, screaming monsters of spike and red and blood and hate. They ploughed through the crowds and still, we could not get away. We could not flee, for the doors were closed. The great gates of the chapel were slammed shut, and every smaller road to this one had these red monstrosities on it. It was butchery. And then it got worse. A huge thing with wings, with flaming sword and whip, descended and came down in the middle of everyone. And it culled so many. Scores slain with one swipe of its monstrous burning blade. Hundreds sent toppling over and in risk of being crushed simply by the force of the things assaulting on us. And I could not see a way out for any of us. I muttered prayers to the God Emperor. We all did. Some screamed, some wailed, but most of us prayed. And as it moved in my direction, the terror, I saw a miracle. For the great doors of the chapel opened. They opened wide, and out came warriors in gold armour. And they were the very guards of His Holiness. They were His custodies. They met with the red beings and started to push them back. They slaughtered them. Yet they could not match the huge being with wings. He slew 3 of them before he met his match. But it came, in gold and silver, towering over us, as it did, a Dreadnought, a gold one. And it levelled one of its arms at the red beast before it, and firepower came out of its arm and it tore all in front of it to pieces. Some were we pilgrims, of course, but that was a necessary evil. As the golden Goliath fought its red counterpart, it moved towards the huge demon with wings and engaged it. And in my mind's eye, I could not see this as anything but apocryphal, for good and evil to match. The molten blade this winged thing wielded came down and was only barely blocked by the fist of the Dreadnought. Yet it was a ruse, and the golden hero brought its weapons up to bear, and it tore through that huge demonic monster. Then, without any form of celebration of its victory, it turned its guns back to the legions of hell and marched directly into them. Nothing could stop it, because the Emperor had blessed it, and his light shone through its weapons of war, smiting the unclean before it. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. A reminder that we have a natural history and a mythology channel now, both with new videos this week. One dropped yesterday, one dropped today. Well, a bit later. So hit the links in the description. It's good stuff, or so we are told. And we now have super thanks, so if you enjoyed the video more than usual, then sling me a coin. Or, of course, Patreon. Now, let us proceed. For today, we shall be discussing one of the rarest weapons in the entire Imperium. A thing of superlative power and efficiency. Its merest presence a sign of divine providence and support. For if any war gear in the Imperium represents the Emperor himself, then surely it must be this, the Telemon Heavy Dreadnought. And so few of them have ever been made, it is a wonder they exist at all. Well, until one realizes the reality of what these things are. And things is the right word. For they are the best of the best, the 10,000, the holy personal guard of the Emperor himself, the greatest of all his post-human warriors, then interred into a Dreadnought. But not any Dreadnought, no. As the Custodes are to the Marine, larger, faster, stronger, more robust, more skilled, so is the Telemon to other Dreadnoughts. For even a Leviathan is likely to suffer from stage fright and shrivel up a bit when stood in the line anywhere near one of these beasts. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, the Telemon Heavy Dreadnought. The Telemon was a rare heavy dreadnought utilized exclusively by the Legio Custodes during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy eras. They are still deployed by the forces of the Adeptus Custodes in the 41st millennium. Fewer than a handful of Telemon dreadnoughts were to be found within the ranks of the Legio Custodes, each intended to stand sentinel over its charges, no matter the force brought against it. In part, this rarity was due to the cost in labour and resources for the creation of such a superlative engine of war, for each bore at least one plate worked by the Emperor's own hand, and also the rarity of appropriate custodian candidates to control them. The honour of interment in one of the few existing Telemon sarcophagi was awarded only to the most celebrated warriors within the sodalities of the Legio Custodes, and until a worthy candidate found his end in battle, the Dreadnoughts stood silent and empty. Despite this, the sheer power of an unleashed Telemon-class Dreadnought far outweighed the trials of its construction, for few can stand against the array of esoteric, handcrafted weapons that graced its chassis, or the ferocious will and warrior skill of the Master Custodian interned within. End quote. Now these Dreadnoughts were not just made of the finest of all materials, ones even denied to the Astartes, the Space Marines, due to their rarity. But they were armed with the most lethal of all weapons at their disposal, the Arcna Storm Cannon, a laser weapon that looked like a Gatling gun, its rotating cylinders whirling as it erupted into life, spraying entire formations with enough power to melt armour, burn skin from skeletons. The Iliastus Accelerated Cannon, more usually seen on a Calidus tank, or later the Sicaran battle tank. These weapons were the most advanced of their time, firing high-density armoured-piercing rounds, or even high-explosive fragmentation shells for sweeping away blocks of infantry. It used a vacuum-based overpressure mechanism to accelerate the shot to levels far beyond normal conventional weaponry. I like to think of it as a Bolter 2.0. And of course, the hammer-handed Telemon Castus Power Fist, far more deadly than any normal Power Fist, even for a Dreadnought, but with the added horror of 2 Proteus plasma projectors, for those close encounters, don't you know. It had ceramite armour and overlapping refraction shields, basically force fields. And this level of damage output in this level of protection made the enemies of the Emperor weep. For they could not destroy them, could not even hit them most often, as they were piloted by the best warriors humanity has ever known, the 10,000, the Adeptus Custodes. With reactions that make Marines or even Eldar look slow, skill and resilience of the ages. A single Telemon would be able to blunt entire advances, slay the most potent beings, Psychers or Hellspawn Neverborn, ever to walk real space. And their creation was so rare that, as noted, the Emperor himself worked on them. He took the time out to do this, with an entire galaxy to conquer. Yes, even he knew the importance these icons would play. And though one might doubt it now, for the Custodians have been so quiet for so long, guarding the Emperor on Terra, and slowly rotting. But now, as Reboot Gilliman, the Lord Commander, has sent them back out into the galaxy, they take the field, all of them. When the Emperor performed his great crusade, they were with him, and so were Telemon heavy dreadnoughts. But one of them, just one, could equate to an entire phalanx of battle automata. For the Emperor had his weapons of last resort, or those I suspect he was creating to eventually bring the tech priests of Mars to heel. But this cannot be proven. It is something I just feel from watching his actions. And for a Custodian to be wounded enough to be crippled, yet still alive, harming a Custodian is a feat unto itself, one that even a Primarch may struggle with, and certainly beyond the wildest dreams of any Astartes, bar only 3 perhaps. There would also be one other situation where this armour would be taken, where a Custodes believed that they had been derelict in their duty, that they had failed. Then, if they be a Telemon unpiloted, they would have the options to willingly volunteer to have their body destroyed, and their brain and other limited essential organs placed in an amniotic sac, and then interred inside the Dreadnought. Yes, the warrior tradition of honour was so pronounced in the Custodians that they would perform actions that none could understand, because these others would never know what the Custodes knew, the very stakes involved. The realization that if they dropped the ball even once, even a delay of a fraction of a second, their emperor could be killed. Their world and the dream of the Imperium would immediately end. For they are the most loyal of all of the forces in the Imperium, more so even than the Praetorians of Terra, his imperial fists. In the Great Crusade, to see a Telemon heavy dreadnought was to know that the Emperor himself was close, on the same battlefield. And this brought out a zeal in humankind, the likes which has never been seen or witnessed before. Now, in the 41st millennium or later, to see a Telemon heavy dreadnought is to know that the God Emperor of mankind is watching. And they would give thanks unto the Emperor for sending his mighty Telemon heavy dreadnought to lead them. And that creates a zeal that like even the Crusaders would shudder to witness. Thank you for your precious time. And thanks to the sponsor of this video, Hero Wars. Hit the links in the video description. And to my long-suffering and incredibly generous patrons, thank you for putting food on our Thanksgiving table. From Hysterosaurus, being Mrs. B, Lightbringer, Minibald, and myself, thank you. And happy Thanksgiving! And no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for gratitude. It keeps you alive and keeps you young. And the fun thing, never forget that. Ever. Toodaloo.